Hello, Faith Community, and welcome to Reading Through the New Testament in a Year. We find ourselves today in Revelation chapter 13. Now, a quick recap. In chapter 12, we see the dragon raging war against the woman. And when she flees, he's going to continue his battle against saints. And how he's going to do that is he's going to raise up two human leaders. These leaders are referred to in Revelation 13 as the first beast and the second beast. The first one is a political leader, and the second one is a prophetic leader. So let's sort of get into it. It says in verse 1, "And I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads. On its horns were 10 crowns, and on its heads were blasphemous names. The beast I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority." Now, there's a lot happening here symbolically. There's a lot that's echoing Daniel's prophecies about the beast that he saw. And what we see in this final beast is the Antichrist. And he's sort of the culmination of every single evil ruler who came before him. You know, some people, they look at this and they say, that it's partially fulfilled in all of these other people. No, every single leader, every single evil, charismatic ruler who came before is rather pointing forward to the beast, but they're not the beast themselves. This beast is a specific individual who's given power from Satan. The dragon is Satan. Now you might think, well, how can Satan give power? We see in Job that Satan can't do anything apart from God. So God is the one who is sovereign. God is in control. God is allowing this to happen upon the earth because it's part of his judgment of the earth. He uses Satan as part of that judgment on the earth. Something else we see the beast. The description of the beast actually reminds us of the dragon when we first saw him, with the 10 heads and the 7 horns. Looks very similar. We see the horns represent this power that he's going to wield over the earth, and the heads represent this royal authority that he's going to have. So as it goes on, it says, "One of the heads appeared to be fatally wounded, but its fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed the beast." Now, this could be that the dragon does a miracle and heals the Antichrist so that he doesn't die, or it could be deception. It says he appears to be wounded. It doesn't say that he receives a fatal wound and he doesn't die. But something happens, and we know that the dragon is a deceiver. And so the whole world is deceived into believing that this beast has power because he doesn't die due to this fatal wound. And then what did they do? It says they worshiped the dragon because he gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to wage war against it?" So the people turn and they begin to worship this man. They begin to worship this man like he is God, and they worship the dragon. They're worshiping Satan as the one who gave him power. Now, something I want you to understand. There's been commentaries before that have looked at other individuals in history and have said, hey, this has already been fulfilled with this person, or this has been fulfilled with this person. Nothing like this has ever happened before. The whole earth was amazed, it says. They, speaking of the whole earth, worship the dragon who gave authority. They worship the beast. There's never been a time where the entire world all turned to one political leader and everybody on the face of the earth worshiped that one political leader. Now understand, this is during the 7-year tribulation. The world has been decimated. Millions and millions of people have died and have been destroyed. The population of the world isn't huge at this point. It makes it a little easier for them all to follow one political ruler, but something like this has never happened in history. Everybody is giving in. Everybody is worshiping this beast. Now, obviously, there are still saints on the earth, and those saints on the earth are not worshiping. And we're going to see that these believers are continuing to be steadfast. And part of the reason we have the book of Revelation is to encourage those believers who come to faith after the rapture to continue steadfast. So the passage goes on. It says, the beast was given a mouth to utter boasts and blasphemies. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. So the beast is in power for 42 months. So 42 months, that's 3.5 years. This is the second half of the 7-year tribulation. So the second half of the 7-year tribulation, the beast is given power upon the earth. And it was permitted to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. It was also given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. So the saints are still holding fast, but when the Antichrist comes to power, he wages war against them, and it says he conquers them. This is a final destruction of the people of God upon the earth. And you've seen that the martyrs in heaven crying out for justice were told that God was waiting for their full number to come in. Sometimes we look at loss of life, loss of battles as a failure, but this is ultimate victory. This is going to result in eternal reward for those who persevere through this tribulation period. It says, all those who live on the face of the earth will worship it, and everyone whose name was not written from the foundation of the world in the book of the life of the Lamb who was slaughtered. So the people who worship this Antichrist are those whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life. And he points out specifically the Lamb that was slaughtered, because those who follow Jesus will suffer like Jesus. As Jesus was rejected, reviled, and crucified, so too will be all who follow him in the last days. And he says, if anyone has ears to hear, let him listen. Something interesting here when it says anyone who has ears to hear, let him listen. There's a difference in this phrase. We've heard it several times in Revelation, but earlier in the letters to the churches, it said, let him listen in the church. Right here, it doesn't say in the church. And this is one of the reasons we believe that the rapture happens before the tribulation. It goes on, if anyone is to be taken captive, into captivity he goes. If anyone is to be killed with a sword he will be killed. This calls for endurance and faithfulness for the saints. And the end days, the saints are to know when they're taken captive, this is the end. When they're facing the sword, this is the end. This is how it ends. Those days will be short. The Antichrist only has power for 42 months, but their end is near, but their glory is right in front of them. It goes on and it says that a second beast rises up out of the earth in verse 11. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. This beast is different. It's not ferocious. It's described more like a lamb. It doesn't have the 7 horns. Instead, it only has 2. It's more of a meek individual, but it's still a evil representative empowered by Satan. It says it exercises all authority over the first beast on its behalf and compels the earth and those who live on it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. It also performs great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in front of people. It deceives those who live on the earth because of the signs that it is permitted to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who live on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. So this individual, this prophet, is permitted to work great wonders. And he even calls down fire from heaven, which usually is something that prophets of God do. This is the final false prophet. And we can recognize his deception because while he has power to do miracles, it's not power to do miracles that shows somebody is from God. It's rather that what they do reflects the word of God. And what we see in this person is that he is a deceiver. He's leading people away. And then what does he do? He tells the people who live on the earth to make an image of the beast. This is an obvious sign that he's not from God. It doesn't matter that he can call down fire from heaven. We are commanded to not worship a graven image. And what is he telling them to do? He's telling them to make a graven image. So you can know that this is not a leader that's from God. And sometimes, you read Revelation, you see the Antichrist, you see this second beast right here, and you might think, how are we going to know? How are Christians going to know when they're doing these miracles that they're not from God? Well, power doesn't show that you've been sent by God. Rather, the Spirit, the hidden person of the heart, reveals that you are of Christ. The wisdom that's from above is peaceable, gentle, willing to yield. This is not the attributes of those who are wielding this power. So we'll know them by their fruits. And these fruits demonstrate that these people are from Satan, that they're of their father, the devil. And so he makes an image of the first beast, and it says this: it was permitted to give breath to the image of the beast, so the image of the beast could both speak and cause whoever would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So this graven image that he creates, he somehow animates and brings it to life, to having an appearance of life, and the world is deceived. And anyone who does not worship the image of the beast is killed. And this is similar to what Nebuchadnezzar did, but it's different because it's worldwide. Everyone on the face of the earth must worship the beast or pay the penalty. How does he keep track of who worships the beast and who doesn't? Well, it says in verse 16, he makes everyone small and great, rich and poor, free and slave to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead. So no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, the beast's name, or the number of its name. So everybody has to receive this mark on their hand and on their forehead, and they can't participate in commerce. They can't buy food. They can't work. They're going to starve to death if they don't worship the beast. Now, there's been a lot of speculation throughout history about what the mark of the beast is, and people try to attach it to different things in our society. This is future. This is going to happen in the tribulation. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe there's echoes yet. When credit cards came around, people were saying, oh, that's the mark of the beast. Christians shouldn't get credit cards. And all throughout history, people have looked at cell phones. People say, oh, cell phones are the mark of the beast. Christians shouldn't have cell phones. Well, this is something that's going to happen in the future, and it's going to be tied to worship of a man, worshiping a man as though he is God. And the mark symbolizes that you're worshiping that man. You're going to know for sure what the mark of the beast is when it comes. And you're going to know for sure, if you're a believer, that it's wrong to receive it. He says in verse 18, this calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, because it is the number of a person. Its number is 666. Now, what does this mean? What does it mean the number is 666? There's so much speculation about this number. There's so much symbolism in this number. There's so much math in this number. And with a math background, I sort of do get fascinated with all of those things. But here's what we need to know. When the beast arises, when the Antichrist comes, this is going to be one of the ways that we're going to be able to identify him. So those believers that are here upon the earth during the tribulation, this is going to be something they can use to identify the beast, to know for sure, I cannot receive that mark. And let me tell you, it's going to be obvious. It says this calls for wisdom. In the end times, those who need this wisdom will ask for it, and God will give it to them, and he will reveal it to them. If we need to know today, he'll reveal it to us today. We can be confident in that. But nothing like this has ever happened in history. Everything in history foreshadows, points forward, echoes what's going to happen at the end. But this is going to be a specific political ruler who's going to rise to power, and he's going to declare all-out war on the saints. He's going to be charismatic. He's going to be powerful, and signs are going to be done through him by Satan. And then he's going to have a prophet who comes after him, who's going to direct people to worship him. When these things happen, they're going to be specific individuals. There's going to be obvious signs. You're going to know when these days are upon you. Now, what I always tell people is to hope for pre-trib. Hope that we are raptured before the tribulation. And that's really what I see when I study scripture, but prepare for post-trib. And what I mean by that is we need to be ready for any sort of persecution, because what we see is that there's been charismatic leaders who've been raised to power who've done terrible things. If you look at Hitler and you see the terrible things that he did, he wasn't the Antichrist. He was a foreshadowing. He didn't have the entire world worshiping him and following him, but he certainly did have a lot of people worshiping him and following him. And we're going to continue to have Antichrist. John tells us in 1 John, Antichrists are going to come before the final Antichrist comes upon the earth. So be ready. Be ready to endure. The one who endures to the end will be saved. Thank you so much for listening to me today.